Dear students, let us start the discussion on 22nd November 2016 newspaper. The first article is related to the rail safety in India. So, Indian Railways is frequently prone for the rail accidents, and most of the cases these rail accidents are related to human errors. So, if we can improve the automation of the rail signaling system and provide for the standard operating protocols, we can definitely reduce these human errors. On rail safety, various committees were appointed. One is Anil Kakodkar Committee, and restructuring of the railways, Bibek Debrai Committee, and Sam Pitruda Committee on upgradation of the rail in India. None of these recommendations are being followed. If you take the Anil Kakodkar Committee's recommendation, it has clearly stated that the railways are at the verge of bankruptcy due to non-revision of the prices of rail tickets for a very long period. And Bibek Debrai committee also has recommended for upgradation of rail coaches and also improving the accounts standards of Indian railway systems. So in this context, let us take the Anil Kakodkar committee's recommendation. It says all the man crossings have to be systematized with a huge cost. And the second thing is we also need to introduce end-to-end signaling system as like European train control systems. And if you take the Japanese system, that is, it is called Shinkansen system. Here there is zero accident rate in the last 2 decades. So India can bring in the same technology. On the other side, the criticism is growing on Indian railways for losing focus. Today, the Wi-Fi and then bullet trains added to that catering services. With this, there is an improved focus, but the rail safety and functionality of rail infrastructure, these are being totally ignored. Now, here I need to talk about the depreciation reserve fund. So, this fund is necessary to maintain or to replace the aging roll and stock in the railways. But however, the fund allocated is been decreasing over years. So it is estimated that around 20,000 crore annually is necessary for the maintenance of rail stock and roll. But however, this year only 3,000 crore is been allocated for depreciation reserve fund. That shows the laxity of the rail system and railway safety in India. So we need to improve the rail safety in this country. The age of post-truth politics. Now, the truth is a virtue anywhere in the life. This is the basis for the Gandhiji's struggle, and he was able to build a mass action, a huge public action based on the truth. And also it builds in huge social capital. But today, the truth and politics are getting separated from each other. Now here, lying is different and holding the truth is different. But the intention is same, that is to deceive or get the misinterpretation of the fact. So many of the political leaders are diplomats. When you talk to them, they say that they are not lying but they are holding the truth. And second is, over a period of time, many dimensions of the truth has come into existence. So today, the truth is seen as a perceived truth, an interpreted truth, or a truth, scientific truth, an evidence-based truth. But truth is virtue and it is universal. It has to be only one. So in politics, the truth has been taken different forms to suit the convenience of the narration of an individual. For example, if you talk about lying in politics, if you talk about the Donald Trump's campaign, so there is a huge misinterpretation of the facts, and it has been very much publicized in the newspapers, but people totally ignored this lying. The reason is the people are also willing to take the truth, what they believe, or truth in association or in synchronization with their popular belief. So, in this context, the truth is getting distorted and truth as a virtue in politics is getting disappeared. And the most worrisome is the people are getting insensitized for this lying by the politicians. And democracy is today is believed as an argument and making others to convince about your ideas. So here, ideology and truth, these are two different things. A truth is a fact. It has no another. It cannot have another narrative. But ideology has different narratives and opinions. But the major problem is an ideology is presented as the truth. So in this context, If the truth can prevail in the politics and if it is possible, generally it can lead to better life among the citizens, better trust and confidence among the members in the society. That's what is the Gandhian values believe in. And more than this, it is not required. But I ask my students to go through this particular essay to get the orientation how to present a philosophical essay. So, I mean, this is more essay perspective go through this particular article. Now, coming to quick fixes for deep rooted issues. Now, remember this statement. When the problem is too deep, when you make the superficial cosmetic changes, that is going to internally erode the system and it can finally lead to death. So, this is what is happening in India. So, the problem is very much deep rooted. We superficially conceive the treatment and we try to mask the problem, which is leading to much deeper erosion. So, if you see the monetization and demonetization issue in this country, it has led to a huge crisis. So, it has been said India is going through a cashless society, or the end of this is to end the corruption, terror financing, tax evasion in the country. These are all laudable objectives, but any of the objective has to be guided by a plan of action. So, in this case, objectives are more pronounced, but the actions are very much minimal. So, a journey towards the cashless society, it involves getting rid of the cultural enigma on cash. Let's take this. Indian society is more preferred to the cash because of various reasons. One is the cultural factors, non-penetration of the banking sector, and added to that, cash in hand, it gives a sense of satisfaction and empowerment. So, even if you take the Sweden, Japan, which are moving towards the cashless societies, the cash to GDP ratio even today is very high. And added to that, coming to tax evasion, the cashless transactions alone cannot lead to tax reduction in tax evasion. So, the tax evasion has to be curtailed at the very base or at very the source. This thing. In the last week, we have seen this argument. The demonetization will only deal with the stock of the cash, but not with the flow of the black money. It means the black money is bound to arise again if we do not deal with the administrative processes and systems that are fighting or that are leading to the flow of black money. So it means what we need to do. If you talk about the real estate sector, gold, these are the places where the unaccounted money is stocked for. So, improving the tax structure in India, providing for lower rates of the taxation, and added to that, improving the tax administration in the country and real estate regulation, all these are necessary to improve the tax system. And coming to this, the people also are apprehended about the banking system. If you take the Lehman Brothers collapse, etc., the value of the money which was stored in the banks got fast eroded. And if you take in India, inefficiency of the banking system is clearly visible with the rising of NPAs. So, in this context, how the people believe the banking structure is another question. So, improving the banking structure is very critical before you move towards the cashless economy. And the third thing is, the black money or unaccounted money is not just stored in the cash, it is also stored in gold and the real estate. Bringing those sectors under the regulation is also very much important. And finally, to this, a clear plan of action is necessary towards moving to a cashless society. An ad hoc approach need to be avoided. So, the demonetization can be an initiation point, it cannot be an end with regard to the achievement of cashless society in India. The buck stops with the states. This topic is related to Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act of India. So here we need to study about the Article 254 subclause 2. So according to this, on a subject in the concurrent list, both the union and state can pass a law. But whenever the union passes the law on the same subject, then union law will prevail over the state law in the normal circumstances. But however, there is an exception to this rule. When state passes a law and it has been reserved by the governor for the consideration of the president, when the law has become or when the bill has become a law with the assent of the president, then automatically the state law will prevail over the union law, even though union makes a law on that subject in the union parliament. So This very provision is said to be misused to circumvent the parliament with regard to the land acquisition bill. So that Mr. Jairam Ramesh in the last week he has criticized that this provision 254 subclause 2 is given to protect the diversity of the states or diverse circumstances that are prevailing in the states. And the land acquisition rehabilitation resettlement bill amendment bill, though introduced in the parliament due to opposition in Rajya Sabha, it was not passed. So what the center is recommending is the states shall get the bills passed in their respective legislature and ask the governor to reserve the bill, and it comes to the president and president will give the assent. It means whatever is being not passed through the parliament is getting passed through the legislature, and it will be getting a legislative sanction through the president assent. So this is said to be circumventing the parliamentary sovereignty. This was the criticism by Mr. Jairam Ramesh. And the second thing here is, if you observe the Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act itself, it says that 80% of the people have to agree for the or give consent for the land acquisition. And in the case of PPPs, it has to be 70%. In the case of private project, it has to be 80%. And the second is, there is social impact assessment. For the government projects, it can be excluded. So, with regard to these stringent systems, land acquisition is said to be the major hindrance for industrial development in the country. The Land Acquisition Rehabilitation Resettlement Act itself, it creates many of the loopholes to circumvent this particular consent and social impact assessment requirements. So that's what this article is talking about. Now coming to the news page. Pak risks isolation in South Asia. The Pak is a member of the SAARC. Any of the SAARC initiatives for regional connectivity, trade, and movement, these are been opposed by the SAARC. The critical example for this is Motor Vehicle Agreement, which was opposed by Pakistan, and added to the regional connectivity plan is also been opposed by the Pakistan. So in this context, the sub-regional plans or sub-regional cooperation is growing in India. That is Bhutan, Bangladesh, India, Nepal is one such an example. And also India, Sri Lanka has signed a recent agreement with regard to extending their cooperation till Southeast Asia. So in this, the sub-regional cooperation is growing in India, and Pakistan has to risk its isolation if it do not come in line with the objectives of common prosperity in the region. And coming to HIV bill. So you know that in India, only 25% of the people living with HIV, they are getting the treatment. The global average is around 41%, and most of the people in India are unable to get the treatment because of a lack of understanding of the disease and also of the financial position. The irony is that India is the capital for the supply of HIV drugs, and it was made the drugs to fight the HIV across the world, but the same did not improve in India. So people living with HIV bill, which is being introduced in the parliament to protect their right to privacy, has ignored the right to treatment clause of the people with HIV. So the emphasis is on prevention rather than on the treatment. So it means it is ignoring more than 1 million of the people who are suffering from the HIV. Now let's get into Sri Lanka's demonetization issue. So you know that India's demonetization issue or exercise has become chaotic due to lack of proper planning. So in this context, in 1970, Sri Lanka also did the similar exercise. But however, it was very well planned and carefully executed, and people have welcomed such a move. Now, if you take in India, the same thing, the pre-preparatory plan has been not active. So one of the reasons we can also quote is Sri Lanka is a small country to implement the same, and India is, too big and diverse as a nation. And the second thing is, the banking sector in 1970s itself is very much well developed in Sri Lanka, but the banking sector and financial inclusion are in the nascent stages even in India today. If you talk about the cash transfer scheme, the Bolsa Família scheme, it was very much successful in Brazil, but the cash transfer scheme has its own problems in India because of its size in execution, and added to that, the banking sector and its penetration in India. So these are the articles for today. Thank you very much and all the best.